Hey, welcome to Volume 4 of How I Became a DoorDasher. I'm Jeffrey Ross. If you haven't seen the other versions of this, Volumes 1 through 3, I invite you to watch them. Volume 4 covers a period of time between 2010 and 2020. And it's actually a really good decade for me, but I want to point out that I was in my 40s to early 50s during that time. So all throughout my 40s and my early 50s, 2010 to 2020. If you've ever thought that it's too late to start over, I want you to know that it's never too late. I reinvented my life and started with nothing, basically, in my 40s and got to where I am today. Which may not sound like it's a great thing. I'm a DoorDasher, but I'm retired. I'm retired at 55. I have no debt. So it's a good story. Let's go. So talking about my tenure with Comcast is sometimes difficult for me because between 2008 and then 2012, I had two relapses. And they were short relapses, nothing where they had to drag me off to rehab or anything like that, but I slipped up in 2008. And then when I slipped up again in 2012, I was out with a lot of work people. It was a work type function, and it's something that I could have basically lost my job for. And it was at that point in my life that I realized, while I had figured a lot of things out and I had gotten clean and sober for the most part, I hadn't established right relations. In other words, I was doing all the right things, but my motivation really wasn't there. I was doing them for the wrong reasons. And I had to get right, not just with the people around me, but I had to get right with God again. And so in 2012, after my second relapse, I started going back to church. And that was really exactly what I needed in my life at that point. It helped me with my work. It helped me with my personal relationships with my wife and with my family and with my daughters. And it made me realize that I can't do things alone. I'm always going to need help from other people around me, and I'm always going to need help from God. And none of this would be possible if it wasn't for God. But throughout the rest of my tenure with Comcast, just real briefly, things went really well through that decade. And remember, I was in my 40s from 2010 to 2020. In fact, I was 50 by 2017. So I hadn't really gotten my act together until then. And so don't ever think that it's too late to start saving for your retirement, or start getting out of debt, or start fixing things that are wrong with your life or with your relationships or with God or whatever. It's never too late. And I'm glad I started in my 40s, because I took that 10-year period of time and accomplished so much. I was able to get completely out of debt, and that includes a mortgage. However, when I moved to New Jersey in 2017, I ended up getting 2 mortgages. It was kind of crazy for a little while. As I worked with Comcast, all of my projects were usually relatively short-lived. And by short-lived, I mean I'd go in sort of a startup, and then I'd move the needle for 1 to 2 years, and then move on to something else. So when I left Comcast in 2019, I knew that I was almost winding down to the end of my career. And so I started planning for a departure somewhere between 2020 and 2025. And then the pandemic hit. I know a lot of people probably lost loved ones, friends, and family, and it was very hard for a lot of people during that time. But I was one of the ones who the pandemic for me was a good thing. It managed to make me realize where I was spending money that I could have saved. It helped me get completely out of debt again for a second time. And that's also where I discovered side gigs, things like DoorDashing. But I don't want to give too much away. That's for the last volume. In the next video, I'm going to talk about 2020 and beyond in the future. And then I also, in a future video, I'm going to give thanks to everybody along the way. So thanks for hearing about what happened from 2010 to 2020.